87% of realtors get into the business and get out of the business in 2 years. That doesn't exist in our world.
We have massive visions around growing our businesses, and we are always looking to add talent to our world. We do everything in our power to ensure the people we surround ourselves with defy the odds, get into production, and build massive lives for themselves.
If you are a realtor looking to get into the business, we have a blueprint for success.
With locations all across Canada, reach out to us. Let's talk about partnership and opportunities. We are looking forward to it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Sales Beast Podcast. I'm super pumped today to be here with Anna. Of course, we love you, Anna. And Mike Paolini, a dear friend of mine, absolute rock star, and probably one of the most interesting realtors I know. So this guy's been in the business for a couple of years at this point, absolutely crushed his first year, followed that up with an even better performance in the second year. And the cool thing I think about you, you're out buying property up north, putting yurts on it, renting them out on Airbnb. You're a big risk taker. I know you're buying property in the Dominican Republic. So if anyone's interested in doing that, this is a man you need to talk to. And you're super young.
So, how young do you think I am, Mike?
I think you're around 30. I know
I'm 30, yeah.
You're 30.
Yeah. You definitely accomplished a lot more at 30 than I
did. What an intro.
Might listen to Mike Paolini, not Mike Johnson.
I wouldn't say that, but I appreciate that intro.
Yeah, cool, buddy. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely.
So, Mike, you have an awesome story, and I think we want to get into that before we jump into what we actually want to talk about today, which is having fun in the workplace. But tell us a little bit about how you got into real estate, a little bit about your journey beforehand and what you were doing before real estate. We'd love to hear your story.
Yeah, I'll kind of quickly take you through that. So I went to business school, and then right after that, I joined a big company, consumer packaged goods company, and pretty much started off on the East Coast in sales, and then eventually got promoted back here to Toronto to continue sales, analysis, and marketing. And I did that for about 5 years. So my job was dissecting a lot of information, but then taking that information and using it to create stories and sell the products that we were selling a little bit better. I was there for about 5 years. Then I took a 1-year break. And in that 1 year, I had already purchased a cottage property. So I have 6 acres up in Muskoka on a pretty private lake. So I had that property at the time, and I used that year to kind of create something on that. So I did create, we'll call like an off-grid eco bed and breakfast, where I'm putting up yurts, pretty much glorified tents around the property, and allowing others to rent that and come enjoy the nature of Algonquin and Muskoka, right? So I took a year off to do that. In the meantime, I had chatted with a friend from my old job who mentioned real estate. He thought I'd be good in it. So I thought I'd get my license kind of almost just for kicks. And then it got a lot more serious, a lot quicker than I thought. And I met people like Mark Loeffler and Dylan Suter. And as soon as I got my license, I was pretty geared up and ready to go. So I joined the Elevation team since honestly day one of becoming a realtor. I'm still on that team now. I love it. And that was about 2.5 years ago. So my first full year as an agent, I did 22 transactions. My second full year as a realtor, which would have been 2022, pretty much, I did 32 transactions. And now we'll see what 2023 has in store, but I'm shifting the focus a little bit from selling. I'm still going to be selling quite a bit, but I'm now the director of residential sales on Elevation. So my focus is a little bit more on managing and growing the team on that side of the business.
Which is a very humble way of saying you run the residential team of one of the largest real estate companies in Keller Williams, Canada. And you got there within 2.5 years?
2.5 years. Number 9 in Canada, if you want to quantify it.
Amazing, man. Good for you. And you got there by being a very nice person that's always willing to share. I appreciate that, man.
And I think that's what we're going to get into a little bit today, right? It's like having fun with the job and doing it with some dignity and some respect and doing it the right way. I think a lot of those old school sales tactics from 20, 30 years ago have quickly died off. So we have to pivot a little bit.
Can you maybe talk to us a little bit about that? Why do we need to have fun on the job? How does it benefit us? And then how do we actually do that?
So I know some people might disagree, but I say it doesn't matter how much money you're making. At a certain point, if you're not having fun on the job, or you're miserable, or you don't like what you're doing, or the people that you're working with, you will burn out. You will switch jobs. You'll resent the industry. You'll resent those around you. So I think it's important to have fun on the job and enjoy it to avoid that. And you have to be deliberate. It's not automatic. Work is work. Any job is a job. You kind of have to be deliberate about having fun and work it into your business plan. So that's what I'm trying to do now, especially as I start to gain traction and pick up steam a little bit with my team, is like, I want to focus on incorporating fun into the day-to-day of the job for myself and my team. It's going to help everybody. We'll produce more, we'll burn out less, and we'll come to the job every day with hopefully a smile on our face.
So I have a point on this that I want to bring up before we get into it. So I was having a conversation a couple months back with a friend and mentor, Kate McKay. Shout out Kate McKay. And she mentioned she has an amazing culture with her company that she's been building over the past like 4 or 5 years. And sometimes as a team leader, as a business owner, it's hard to balance like the culture with the perks. Like the culture should be one of profitability, production, etc. And then the perks are that you get to have fun and, have a great environment and be collaborative and stuff. So how do you kind of balance those two things right now? And how are you creating the culture every single day, Mike?
Well, it's a few things. I've already mentioned one. It's actually like scheduling it, which is kind of counterintuitive. It's like, oh, fun is supposed to be spontaneous, but that's not the case. I think you have to schedule it. I think you have to, frankly, train on it. And I'll get in that next on how you can actually train to have fun on the job. And then lastly, lead by example. If you're saying one thing and doing another and not practicing what you preach, and you're telling your team to have fun and do A, B, and C, but then you're stuck on the phones all day, you're not having fun, you're complaining all the time, like it doesn't really matter. That's what they're going to see, not what you say, right? So I think it's a bit of a combo of all those 3 things.
I think often, and I've done this myself, I will have fun or enjoy myself when I make a certain amount of money. That always for me leads to burnout. When I have the most fun is when I come in and I enjoy growing every single day. Maybe I'm working on a new script or a new way to communicate with someone. Or maybe I'm just focusing on making the contacts and I'm getting joy out of making the contacts. And I know if this is a math sport, and if I make X number of contacts and then take care of those contacts when they're in my database, it's going to lead to a result. So why worry about the result? Why tie our joy to the result at all? Just come in and follow your calendar and get joy out of what you do every single day.
And you're good at that, Mikey, because I know, like, I'm not sure anymore, but at one point I know that you had a dollar, or pretty sure a penny per call calculation that you did. And like, hey, that's fun. It's like knowing how much you're making per call. And that's just like you alluded to, having fun along the journey versus just like grinding for the destination.
Yeah, you mentioned you were at Unilever as an analyst. So we talked about this before. I was an analyst with Honda Canada, and everything was based on metrics. And that's what I'm trying to bring to our team now. So on average, guys, how many follow-up calls do we need to make in our CRM to do a transaction? How many new prospects or cold contacts we need to make in order to do a transaction? From there, for say a new agent that joins our system, how many appointments do you need to go on based on conversions of new agents we've had over the last 5 years? Do you need to go on in order to convert something? So we know your conversion is going to be garbage in the beginning. And once you just build out this, or once you solve the math problem for someone, you can say, based on our averages, you need to speak to X number of people per day over a 48-week year. You can take a month off for vacation. You'll book X number of appointments and you'll make however amount of money you want. And the agent can tweak their inputs based on what they want to achieve.
And know what the best part about that is that unlike working at Honda or Unilever, they had similar math, obviously, but when you would do the work behind that math, you're helping to achieve the company's goals. Versus what's awesome and let's call it fun about real estate is that it's your goals. It's you have a 100% vested interest in those numbers. So it's like, I remember I would burn out in my last job because I would be grinding and my paycheck was the same every single week. And I was trying to accomplish somebody else's goals, which is fine for a lot of people, but not quite how I'm wired. So it's really nice to be in this industry where we do the exact same math, obviously on our side, knowing that that math will directly benefit us and that if we work harder or less hard, again, it directly affects us.
Yeah.
So I think like one thing I've noticed is we have similar roles now. So the math around real estate transactions is amazing because the only reason I wake up every single morning is to get my agents in production so they hit their goals. But we now have our own math. Like I know for me, per agent on average, based on the number of transactions our average agent does, I'll net 70 grand to this company. So say I want to make $10 million at some point in the future. I have a spreadsheet because I'm a nerd and I can plug in price appreciation, average is 5% per year over the last 100 years. See what homes will be worth in 20 years. I know our average commission. How many agents do I need to make $10 million per year in 20 years? It's just a math problem. And if I wake up every day and take a step in the direction of the achievement of my math problem, I have full faith that someday I'll get there. Because
the problem is most people don't know that math, I would say. So it's like they know they want to be vaguely successful, or maybe that they even want to do 10 million in sales or whatever you said, but they don't quite know the inputs behind that. So
I also find it's not even that they just don't know the math, it's that they're not seeking to understand their numbers. Like most commonly when I'm talking to agents, and I'm talking like at least 40, 50 new agents every single month, and they don't even they have the ignorance to not even understand their numbers. Like they don't even care about, the conversions or what's going on behind the scenes. And I think I got to commend both of you guys because both of your teams are operating at a high level on understanding your numbers so that you can directly benefit from the results. If you don't know your numbers, you're never going to get anywhere.
We always talk about modeling, right? And we're fortunate to work within the company of the largest, Gary Keller essentially is the largest real estate team in the world. I firmly believe one of the reasons he's been able to scale at the rate he has is because he has more data than any other company and he actually tracks it. So if Gary's doing that, why would we not do that?
Absolutely. And what I find with agents, and let's face it, if people listening know the DISC profile, most agents are not high Cs. So tracking their numbers and getting into these details is not natural for them. So it's almost like we have to rewire them a little bit to think this way. But what's cool and what I've noticed, Mike, I'm curious if you notice this as well, because we put such an emphasis on numbers and analytics on our team, is it's starting to transfer into the rest of their job. So like, for example, in listing presentations or like putting together an offer for a buyer, the analysis behind that, it's a lot deeper than I'd say 90% of agents out there. I think partly because we're just forcing it into their brains that numbers and analytics matter, and they're carrying that into all aspects of their job. So even the analysis, like the CMAs and the market trends that exist that we should and have to know in our job, they're being more interested in that side of the business, which is awesome. And it takes people, in my opinion, from an employee to a business owner.
For sure. For sure. No, and I appreciate that. And I'm not a numbers person, so I want to move into the fun side of things. So you mentioned scheduling. Like, I want to know, what are you scheduling to make things fun on your team? Are you gamifying certain things? What does that actually look like to schedule fun in your team's life?
So if we're talking, well, I do it quite a bit within the team or within our, I'll say within our sphere. So every November, December, when we're doing actual business planning for the following year, I'm trying to get things into the calendar for the entire year before it even starts. I think is important, or else you'll forget or miss one, or life gets in the way. And those types of things that I'm putting into the calendar will be team socials, client events, team challenges, um, certain even status meetings with, I'll do a quarterly meeting with each of my agents, but that quarterly meeting is actually not to talk anything about work. Obviously, we're always socializing on a daily basis. I have a weekly meeting with my team where we actually get into the numbers. So I know if they're on track or not. I don't have to meet with them every 3 months to make sure they're on track. I know that well in advance. I'm scheduling stuff in so I can, it's actually a lunch every 90 days with each agent individually, just to get to know them on a better personal level. I'm eventually going to get to the point that Mike's team is at, where we're scheduling in like team trips and that type of stuff, because I'm sure Mike can attest that the chemistry and the energy of the team skyrockets after that type of stuff.
You know what I think is the best? So I stole that from my previous life at Honda Canada. My job, part of it was to sell more cars. So I had to incentivize customers to buy the cars and incentivize dealers to sell them. I did that through dangling a carrot, which was a trip in front of a dealer to get them to sell more Honda Civics. So we take our guys to the same resort I took the dealers to before I was in this business. But one thing I owe to you guys, you and Dylan specifically, the trips where you go learn something. Like I would say we got better bonding, and we learned something from going to Tony last year in West Palm than the bond we built going to Mexico. I love that. And I think like we're blessed, all of us, like we're all super tight with Dylan and Sandy. But a lot of the agents that enter our system, they've never been exposed to growth. And I know the first time I was exposed to it, it was nothing like Tony Robbins. But even like the first book I learned on growth, wow, I can actually get better by taking certain steps in my life. It rocked my world. That's, I think, got to be my focus in 2023. Like, let's go on trips together where we actually learn something and grow together.
What I'm doing, Mike, and you can feel free to rip this off, obviously, is on that point, it's, you don't have to book a whole trip and pay $800 for a Tony event. Do that. It's awesome. You won't regret it, but you can also do mini versions of that. So what I'm doing now is, as we know, we have almost too much training at Keller Williams. There's so much access to training, but it's all real estate related. So what I'm trying to do is every quarter, I like to work in 12-week years. Every quarter, I bring somebody in who's completely unrelated to the real estate industry to come coach my team on something that will help them grow. So what I'm going to do for quarter 1 is I'm bringing in a voice coach, not at all related to real estate. It's a girl who actually her whole job is focusing on helping. She works with like CEOs and directors of like these huge multinational companies. She works with them on how to speak and how to intonate certain things to come off as more confident or more calm or more trustworthy, whatever the case is, right? So you don't have to um, you don't have to spend a bunch of money. It's just kind of being, once again, deliberate about who you're bringing in and putting in the calendar and doing it. And that stuff is, once again, for me at least, fun. Gives you a bit of a break from all the real estate stuff that we do 8, 10, 12 plus hours a day. And it helps you switch it up.
It sounds too like you're bringing in some skills that maybe your team members never got the opportunity to learn or never got the opportunity to be in front of. Like, I mean, unless you're being intentional about it, you're not going to go and seek out a voice coach realistically, but by bringing those skills to them, you're helping them grow and, you know, build their arsenal so that they can go and get more business or get, you know, more experience or whatever it may be, right? So I had a question and I just lost it. So I'm going to pass it over to Mike.
I think that's the best point. That
I have a question for him. Maybe I'm done. I'm out.
Guys, let me take over this. Let me take over this podcast.
Okay, it's Mike's podcast now.
Leave it with me. No, I just want to say that's actually the best point that we didn't even hit on. Is like we're talking about having fun, and I have a couple other points that I can mention on how to do that. But this is all helping us sell more. And you just said it, like this is all helping us build our arsenal and become more productive.
Oh, I remembered what I was going to say really quickly before I lose it. It wasn't a question. It was actually a quote. We were at the Shift into Overthrive event last week. And one of the quotes that I hear very often from Gary and Mark King is leadership is teaching people how to think bigger or think better so that they can get what they want when they want it. And so by, you know, providing them a fun environment, a fun culture, but also giving them skills that they wouldn't potentially seek out on their own, you're helping them think bigger.
1000%.
I think there's a tool I use. I don't know if it's a good way to look at it, but you and me might kind of started in the same way. You too, Anna. Like we all started on teams. And I look back to when I first got in the business and think to myself, what made me feel good? What motivated me that other people did to me? What inspired me? And it wasn't the transactions at all. Like I'm very much a people pleaser. It was Sandy giving me a pat on the back, maybe when I booked my first appointment or signed my first listing. And he'd celebrate it publicly. And it made me feel good inside. It made me want to do it again. Not that we should work for the praise of other people, but I make a point of doing that. Like if someone does something simple, maybe they're lacking confidence on the phone, and I hear them make a good call. We have a WhatsApp group, and we'll just celebrate that as a group. It's not all about transactions and these huge wins. I heard something recently. It was saying we're all looking for that magic pill or that big nugget of gold in our business and in our life. And I used to do that. But really, the people that get the big nugget of gold at the end of the day, it's that person that's chipping away, focusing on the fundamentals over and over and over and over again. And they're picking up little flakes of gold every single day. Eventually, little flakes turns into a big nugget. And you wake up and say, wow, that guy's an overnight success. Actually, no, they're not. It took 10 years.
And like, yeah, if you're only celebrating the transactions, a great agent is doing, 20, 30 transactions a year. That's not enough. I want to celebrate more than 20 times in an entire year. So let's do the small wins. I love that WhatsApp group idea. You do like Zoom groups on my team. It's like, yeah, little things like that. We kind of even make it a game where we'll put in like funny stories of getting rejected because it can hurt, but if you commiserate with everybody and get everybody, like, kind of make fun of yourself, you can make it a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a psychology hack too right now, because what we're alluding to right now is just rewarding good behavior. So when you see something that's being done correctly, you're giving praise, giving recognition, giving significance, whatever it is. And maybe this is a hack for you guys to use on your team too. But recently, one thing that we started doing, because obviously as a company, we really want to grow and we want to grow with the right people. So whenever we get an agent that joins our company that was referred by another agent within our company, we'll put a little note in the WhatsApp group, like welcoming them, but also saying like, thank you to so-and-so for referring this agent. And as a result, we've seen our referrals and our growth just happen way faster, just as a result of changing one thing and changing one message in our WhatsApp group, which is crazy.
That's genius. I pay the agents on our team $1,000 if they refer someone to me and they make it through the 30, 60, 90. Maybe I just cut that out and say thank you publicly.
Could be.
You just saved me a lot of money, Anna.
There you go. You're welcome.
Just made me think of something too, Mike. We're very much numbers focused people, and I just said a word publicly. Something popped into my head. One thing we started doing this year, and not everyone loves it, and I understand why. People don't like change. All the numbers we track. So I track contacts made in the database. I track contacts made to non-met, so prospecting contacts. I track appointments. I track from appointments to listings buyers signed, transactions, GCI. I started publishing all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like if Sarah on our team did nothing last week, everyone knows about that. I send multiple emails about it. It goes out in our Slack, it goes out in our WhatsApp. We have a Monday meeting where it's published. That trying to create this environment where no one could hide.
I'm not quite there yet. You have to be careful with that too, because some people might resent that. Then again, those people might not be the best fits on the team anyway.
GCI gets hidden. It's focused on the inputs. So you told me this year you want to make 100 grand. We mapped out a plan to get you there. You told me you were willing to put in this amount of work. I asked for permission on a scale of 1 to 10. How accountable can I hold you? Everyone says 10. And that's what I do. I, once again, don't reward the results. I'm not sharing the GCI. I share it with the individual, but all the inputs get shared.
Yeah.
As percentages. So if I'm doing 50% of what I said I was going to do to get to my goal, the whole organization knows about that. If I'm doing 120% what I said I was going to do, the whole organization knows that, and it's celebrated.
And that's the goal that they gave themselves.
Yeah, I never set goals for people. They always change. Yeah. I got that from Chris Suarez, who we actually had on this podcast. He's also a nerd. We could have a great conversation with him. I don't know if I should say that. I mean that in the most endearing way possible. He's like my favorite realtor. But I heard him talking about time management. And on this podcast, it was crazy. We are in such and such day of such and such month. And I know we're 17% through the year. And across all of my businesses, I'm 15.5% to target. So I know I have a gap of 1.5% I need to make up. And I know exactly where that gap is in each business. I'm like, I don't know that at all in my business, but I'm going to start tracking it like that. And once you do, like people know exactly where they stand at all times. You know where you stand, and you know what you need to work on. It just provides clarity.
Can we chat about working with the people you want to work with? And I mean that not team wise, I mean that client wise as realtors.
100%.
Just something I want to touch on in terms of having fun on the job. And again, to Anna's very first question on the podcast, how I work it in to my business. And one of the ways I do that is So we do something called the ideal client exercise. So on day one, the very first day of training as a new agent on my team, we do something called the ideal client exercise. I won't get into it fully here, but essentially it's an exercise. It's quite simple. You do it in like 20 minutes. That helps you really narrow in on the people that you want to work with, who your ideal client is. That's geography, that's price point, that's age, that's their hobbies, that's their demographic in terms of like, are they a couple, are they single, or are they old, are they young, are they first time buyers, are they investors, downsizers, like list goes on, right? So you hone in incredibly well on who your ideal client is. And I understand as a new agent, you're going to take anything that comes across your desk, but eventually you get to a point where you can be a little bit more choosy and go back to this exercise and strictly work with, again, what we call the ideal client. I'll ask this question to both of you is like, how much easier and better is your job when you enjoy working with the people that you're trying to help?
100 times better.
How bad is it when you don't jive with that client?
Horrible.
It's the worst, right? And the best part, so like what we're trying to give our team clarity on is like who they want to work with. Because I know if my team is working with the people that they like, that they jive with, that they want to work with, they'll be a lot happier, which reflects and kind of cascades throughout the whole team, right? Just in terms of energy. The best part about working with people you like is obviously mood is increased, but they also tend to transact a lot quicker. I'm not sure if you notice that, but anytime I'm working with like a couple or somebody I just like having a great time with, I'm almost sad that 90% of the time we find them a house in like 1 to 2 weeks. But that's because you're building a much better relationship with them. You're not pulling teeth and you're able to build that trust a little bit quicker to be able to get them into a house quicker, which means if you're getting clients into houses a lot quicker, you can sell a lot more houses versus, once again, working with the people that might just not jive with. You don't have the same views on things. Maybe there's a knowledge gap. And then those ones can take weeks and months and years sometimes to close. And it's a lot of mental real estate when hopefully you can get to a point where you can strictly focus on that ideal client.
I love that. I think the beauty of it too is those people tend to hang out with people. We all do. We hang out with people that are similar to us, that have similar beliefs and habits and way of communicating with people for the most part. My experience is when you work with that ideal client, they have a great relationship and they refer you their family and friends, who more often than not are very similar to them.
Mm-hmm.
You're not just getting one ideal client, it snowballs.
Yeah, absolutely. My lead gen now essentially is all database and referrals at this point. So what my lead gen is, again, going back to the fun part of the job, pretty much what my lead gen is I do lunch and dinner appointments. I still do seminars and whatnot, but most of my lead gen is just going out for lunch and dinner with people that have been referred to me or past clients or friends. It's like, that's a lot of fun. I'm going out, I'm having a beer and some tacos with referrals or people that I know, and it helps you build, once again, a better relationship. It's more fun, in my opinion, than cold calling, although I know some people love cold calling. And yeah, it's kind of like you said, it's a nice circle. You gain momentum, and then you start attracting the people you want to attract a little bit more.
I love that. When I started, I was the cold call guy and I worked beside someone just like yourself. We started about the same time. I didn't have much faith in what he was doing. You're out going for lunches, and while you're out for lunch, I speak to 50 people. And then we had this board in the office where we write our deals down. And in the beginning, my method worked better and faster than his. But he would come in after some weekends, he'd write 4 deals up on the board. Next weekend, 2 deals. And I didn't believe that it was working. I'm like, you're just getting lucky with this database thing and your lunches. And it kept happening again and again and again. And I feel grateful for that experience because that's what flipped the switch in my brain and it made me realize I need to start taking better care of people and actually showing an interest in their lives.
I spend about $10,000 a year strictly on client or lead lunches and dinners, but the return is 10 times that.
That's incredible.
That doesn't even count the like client events. I think you guys are doing like the Jays game, or I think I saw that. That doesn't count any of that. That is strictly going out for meals or drinks with people. And you have to do it strategically, but it can work.
Can you maybe give some advice around that? Because I know a lot of realtors, I was one of them. We think rather than going for a lunch, let me go knock on 100 doors. Doesn't cost me any money to knock on 100 doors and I can do it within the same period of time. I think in our heads, we think a transaction is going to come out of 100 doors a lot faster. Over the years, I realized the lead time, like the time to actually convert any lead is 6 months on average. I would argue the time to source a lead off a lunch or pouring into your clients and actually convert it is a lot faster than a cold call, a door knock. Open house is pretty quick at times. How do you overcome that limiting belief?
So I will say, like, it's not for everybody. Just like cold calling is not for everybody, right? You actually have to have a strong database. If you don't have that strong database yet, you have to door knock. Like Lorraine says this, right? Lorraine Jordan, door knock, cold call, do that colder prospecting until you get your top 150. Once you have your 150, you can start transitioning more to the warmer, in my opinion, more fun lead gen, which is the lunches and dinner. So maybe don't start this until you do have a pretty solid base of a database, which I would say I have. And then after that, it's based on needs. So you see people at a party or you meet friends of friends and it's like, hey, let's go out for lunch and talk. So like you'll always schedule a few that way. But if you want to be a bit more calculated about it, the same way that we do our database calls in that DTD2 or DTD4 system, you can apply that to lunches or coffee dates as well. So, take your A's and your W's and work through them for a month. Again, it takes a lot longer. You can probably do your whole database depending on how many people it is, and it's going to take you 6 whole months because you can make a lot more calls than obviously coffees and lunches. Let's want to be really hyped up after 6 coffees in a day. But yeah, you can get calculated about it. Just put it on paper, book them in, and you'll be surprised at how receptive people are. And frankly, I don't even go and talk about real estate. It always comes up, obviously. People love talking about it, but that's not my intention. That's not my goal. That's not what I lead with. I lead with the personal stuff, the forward stuff, family, occupation, recreations, dreams. I start with that stuff. The conversation 100% of the time flows into real estate. And then from there, magic tends to happen pretty often.
That's incredible. Have you applied any math to it? Like, do you know how many lunches you need to go on to source a referral or find someone that's looking to transact?
So, like, I know a rough conversion rate, but I haven't gone that granular on that side of my lead gen. Like for seminars that I do, I can get very detailed on that. But I just did my 2022 year-end stats. I kind of do like a Spotify Wrapped on my own business. So I'll say of the 32 transactions I did in 2022, 24 of them were from my database. So heavy database, right? About 70% is from my database. Of those 24 from the database, I would say half of them, 10 to 12 of them were procured strictly through like a lunch day. So 10 to 12 of those, let's say 10 to 12 sales from lunches. And I would have gone on a lunch a week, call it. So like 50 lunches. So like 1 for 5. Every 5 lunches I go on, I'm getting a client, which is kind of scary because I'm like, why don't I just do 5 lunches this week? And I'll get a client every single week. But
So you can go to a really cool place with that. Like where my head would go is what's your average sale price? What's your average commission percentage? What's your take home after splits? And then you have a dollar value you earn per lunch. And you just set up a lunch plan based on that. Based on how much money you want to pay.
I guarantee the money you make is a lot more than the $100 or $80, sometimes $40 lunch you're doing. The problem with that, Mike, is like I've thought about this. It's like, oh, I just have to do 5 lunches a week and I'll do a sale every week. I don't have that many close people in my database. 5 a week times 50 weeks. I don't have 250 people that would go on lunch with me on a yearly basis. I have that many in my database, but the ones that are close by that would accept what you're saying with me. So I kind of have to spread it out. So you have to
give you a target though.
Yeah.
Like say it is 250 lunches you need to go on, but you only have 50 people that will meet you twice a year. You know exactly where you need to go.
I have to increase my database.
Yeah, that's so cool.
I love that. That's a
and then really take it to the next level. You get leverage and teach someone else how to go on lunches.
Or book you the lunches, so all you have to do is show up.
You just show up, which is kind of actually my next step. And again, going back to the whole theme of this chat is like having fun. That's so much fun if you can just go and have beers and lunch with somebody and make 10K off of it.
100%. I wanted to ask you, I know we're going to be wrapping things up quickly, but in the same way that you have like an ideal client, do you have an ideal team member, Mike? What does that look like?
So I focus my team on diversity. I have a few check boxes. We do a DISC profile. We do a KPA. We look at backgrounds, resumes, obviously. There seems to be a trend with those who are most successful in real estate. Those are the people that have historically been entrepreneurial, historically in business jobs. Engineers tend to be extremely successful. Yeah. We're not pointing those. I think, actually, Mike, you have a couple on your team who are ex-engineers. They tend to be more naturals at real estate, but we don't count anybody out. What I'm looking for is, and we follow a long process I won't get into, but what I'm focused on is diversity. So I just have a new hire that started a couple of weeks ago. Going back to this profile, one of the reasons I really liked him and want him on the team, aside from checking all the background boxes, is he was a high C. So he was a highly analytical person. I don't have that on my team yet. So he checked all the other boxes and filled a bit of a gap that I don't have with any of the other agents on my team. So I wanted that mindset on my team because that tends to spread across team members when they see what he does from an analytics point of view and hopefully pick a couple things up. So that was important to me. It also takes pressure off of me because now instead of teaching my team all that highly detailed analytic stuff, this new hire will get to a point where he can actually take that job on himself. And I know he'd be happy to. So that's almost leverage for me to build a diverse team where I can get the team teaching the team versus me, doing everything all at once. So diversity in personality and strengths and weaknesses.
I love that. I've been focusing on the same thing recently with our leadership team because Sandy and I are both IS or SI kind of. And so we don't really have enough like D type personalities, which our next hires and some of the people that we have in our bucket are Ds, because we know we need that more decisive, dominant individuals. So that's funny. Awesome. Mike Johnson, to not be confusing here. Do you have any more questions? Otherwise, I'm gonna end it off with our last question of the day.
No, I think we covered a lot. Go ahead.
I think this was an awesome episode. I think our teams are very similar just as a result of our leadership styles and the people that we're in business with. And I really appreciate seeing your growth over the past couple years. And so to end things off today, Mike, how we end off each episode is we have the same question for all of our guests. And so I'm going to ask you, Mike, who do you know that we should also have on this podcast?
The problem here is I think everyone I know that should be on the podcast has already been on the podcast. For some reason, I was the last one and I had to beg you. But what I would say is, going back to a point I made earlier in this episode, is it'd be really cool to bring on somebody who is completely, utterly unrelated to real estate, who can come on here and give people a lot of value, but a lot of different value than we're kind of used to hearing about in the industry. Whether that's a voice coach or somebody from a tech company to talk about that side of things, whatever it is, I think that would be really cool.
Could you put us in touch with that voice coach that you're bringing in to do the
I will.
Okay, that would be awesome.
I will. I'll do that today.
Thank you, Mike. Well,
thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us for episode number 68 with Mike Paolini. It was great chatting with you and can't wait to see all the growth that's going to happen for you this year.
Thanks.
Every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling, every day I'm